Now, to you, the public, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say to you that there is an old adage that goes, no man is above the law. And for so long, we've thought that the ex-president has presented himself above the law because every time he got caught for doing those things that indicated that he needed to be dealt with by the law, and the people said, put him up, let him be dealt with, for some strange reason, that last piece of power that had the authority to open the door, to go into a cell or close it and say you don't have to, always said you don't have to him. And it made a lot of people feel very, very uncomfortable about the kind of system, justice system that they were living under, especially when you talk about everybody is under the law. And so what is going on right now, it appears as if some attention is being given to some of these violations that this guy has committed. And perhaps the law might at least be publicly trying to get his attention. Where it's going, nobody knows. And some people are excited about that. But that old adage that no one is above the law, I want you to understand and appreciate just as much as you appreciate that no one is above the law. I want you to appreciate that there is no law that is above righteousness. There is no law that is above righteousness. How many of you know what righteousness is? I mean, if really seriously, think for a moment. What is righteousness? Is righteousness doing that which represents truth? Is righteousness that which represents goodness, that represents kindness? Is righteousness doing, if it affects others, unto them, as if you would have them to do unto you? Is righteousness taking what you understand the power of God to be, to live inside of you and to allow it to be expressed through you as if you're doing the work of God? Is this what we call righteousness? Well, if we call that righteousness, then we got to get busy because we're missing that by a long shot. And that is absolutely true, but righteousness is much more than that. Righteousness is understanding. Righteousness is forgiving. Righteousness is to know that there are those that don't know and will never know unless we show. And so this is what righteousness is all about. Showing, leading the way. Not beating people upside the head because they don't know the way, as I used to try to do, because I thought they knew the way, because they were proclaiming that they knew the way, but they didn't have the evidence, so they started getting beat by the head till I realized and woke up. Hey, nobody told me this. And so, hey, I just can't assume, especially when. And so, I've been corrected. Now, we have talked about peace, and we've talked about prosperity and freedom and joy. We've talked about our dreams coming true. Now, in order for these kinds of things to happen, we have to aim for that. We have to make sure that we are satisfied if we're going to have peace and these things are going to happen, to keep these stumbling blocks out of the way. So those things that I all have to say this, those things that are essential for any of us and all of us, very essential, that we can't do without, maybe could, but that's not, since we don't have to. And that deals with simple stuff like food and clothing and shelter and education and health care. Man, and transportation and infrastructure, and all of the wonderful things that we as human beings have determined that can be done. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know this. This wonderful power has created this world and given us an opportunity to choose how we want to live in it. We can choose righteousness. Righteousness is what I've been talking about. And this is where your dreams come true. You don't have to lie. You don't have to cheat. You don't have to steal. You don't have to kill. You don't have to terrorize. You don't have to be in war. You don't have to be a racist. You don't have to be a bigot. But I guarantee, in every other way of dealing with life, these that you don't have to be in righteousness are a part of every last one of these other systems. Communism, socialism, dictatorships, democracies. Some of this bull is a part of all that stuff. And why? Because it's all separated from the path of righteousness. It's all separated from the truths of love. It's all separated from God. And so I'm basically saying, ladies and gentlemen, hey, that we can, it's no big thing. We can return back to God. God has never turned away from us. We've always just decided we want to do something else. And we haven't returned to God because those who stand up for God used to get killed out. But I want you to know this, ladies and gentlemen. The reason that the people who turn to God, the reason that they get murdered or assassinated is because they represent truth. And they become a light to so many of you that were so close. And it's like you heard them say, cutting the head of the snake off. Well, they cut the head off the snake. Dr. Martin Luther King, everybody that's been killed and outright, they knew that this was part, but they had to stand up and be real. They couldn't come this far like some have and all of a sudden stop. No, being real means keep on standing so we can see, so everybody can see. And when they come and kill this guy, they come and kill him because they don't want you to see. But what you are supposed to see, if you're coming close, if you want to see, that this is the reward. Aren't you going to die? Aren't you going to die? You know anybody that's probably not going to die? Well, look at this guy who has chosen to stand up and tell us that there's a God, to tell us that there's a power that's bigger than the man that's pulling the trigger to take his life. And before he turn around and stop and act like God does not exist, he will allow that guy to take that trigger, pull that trigger, and take his life so he can be free from this hellhole. And so we can know. We don't have to settle. We don't have to be afraid of this guy. We don't have to be afraid of a gun. We don't have to be afraid of dying. I know I'm talking big. But listen, let me tell you something. The Republicans, I say, right now, you know how the Republican Party has changed. You know, they have started talking about alternative truths and stuff. In other words, they have started saying, my lie is now a truth, and it's just as good as your lie or your truth, whatever you want to call it. That's what the Republicans say. And they have been hitting below the belt if you listen to Democrats talk about them. And if you really talk about it to the Republicans, they'll agree. They will admit they've been hitting below the belt, and they don't care because it's been working for them. And some of the commentators that have been making comments in regards to how the Democrats have been responding to this, they are thinking that the Democrats should come back a little bit harder, that Democrats are too weak, and that while, like, for instance, Donald Trump been out of jail all of this time, still spreading that propaganda every day, every night, spreading propaganda, stuff that doesn't have anything to do with truth, but he was able to do it because he was out, not locked up like everybody else would have been locked up. So what they're basically saying is this stuff works against, it's not the right kind of stuff. It's not righteousness, and so it might appear fantastic on one side and crazy on the other. But you know what it's doing? They say if the Democrats don't hit hard back, that they're going to get squashed. But that's not what basic human rights says. Basic human rights says something different. Basic human rights says this: let them do what they do. But what we do is what hasn't been done. Let's do something that's interesting. See, what they're doing is a repeat of what they've been doing all the time. Nothing new. And even the Democrats, if you say they're being silent, well, they've been silent all the time too. But why don't we do something that has not been done? Like, start advocating for that peace where we just got through talking about. Let's start making sure that we do those kinds of things that will bring that about. Let's make sure that these commentators stop talking about the old stuff. Let's stop talking about that stuff that's what people are fumbling with, and start glorifying the new stuff. The way America's getting ready to change. It is not going to be bad. It's not going the way Trump wanted us to go. It's not going to stay where the Democrats had us. We're going to move on up. where we the people want to go. And this is going to be shown in the way we start acting. And Eddie Marcus and those who are associated with those what we call righteousness. No, we don't. We're not perfect. Anybody that know what we might be focusing on righteousness at, and you got another understanding of righteousness that takes us beyond that, you better let me know quick, because I want to know all that good stuff about love and God, all right? All right, so I want to thank you so very much for giving me this your time, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to know it's not about trying to talk dirtier than the Republicans, Democrats. That's not about talking dirtier. It's not even about, it's about giving people something else. Giving them something else. Those guys that were with Trump, they were looking for something else. They got what they got. It is something else. But now let's give them something else that's fantastic. Something that they don't have to be picking up flags and walking the streets talking about this is that. No, they just start saying, hey, bro, where you been? We're back. And now let's have a good time. So think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, Eddie Marcus saying good night.